All right, welcome back. 26.2. We'll be taking a look at these creatures over here. Let me get my handy dandy pen here. Okay, 26.1. We looked at all of these and kind of what makes them different, a little bit more about, a little bit more than their body plans. So we went into all the different phyla. Today, we will be talking about 26.2. Chordates are those that have a vertebra, or what we call vertebrates. Okay, so those are your goals for this. Chapter 26 quiz will be the end of the week. As mentioned before, no tests. Your final will be animals and plants, and your quiz is a little bit longer, 25 questions as last quiz, and then pretty minimal on work. You're really just going to be doing those science structables where you're creating kind of a dissected animal for the most part. So since we can't dissect in a lab, we're trying to do it while you can do it at home. So that is what we are pretty much doing for the rest of the class. So a little bit about chordates. They're animals that we know best. Like I said before, when I think of an animal, you think of your pets, your cat, your dog, guinea pigs, right? These are the most common animals. Now they're not the most um, they don't have the most. Okay, we talked about the invertebrates having the most, arthropods being somewhere around somewhere between 6 and 10 million of the 16 million or so species. Okay, so there's 6 groups. You have some non-vertebrate chordates, meaning they are still chordates, but they don't have a vertebrate. Fishes, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and birds. Fishes are going to make up the largest of those, and only a fraction of those living today compared to what have existed. So chordate types is going to be very similar to that of what we talked about in 26.2. I'll kind of go through these and then show you some pictures of what they are. Non-vertebrate chordates do not have a backbone. These adult tunicates look more like sponges, so these are kind of sponges that kind of are on ground in the waters, things like that. There's no notochord or tail, but larvae all have all key features of the chordate. So this, you see it in the larva stage, but then as they mature, you kind of get away from the 4 characteristics that make up a chordate. Those being lanceolate and tunicates. Those are common non-vertebrate chordate. So if you see these in a cladogram, these are going to be the first ones, as these are more simple. As you see that only the larvae are going to possess what is needed for, or the features for, the chordate. After this, you're going to have amphibians. Now the word amphibian means a double life. And that comes from the life of being able to live in water and land. You think of a frog. Frogs are going to be, when they hatch, their eggs hatch, they hatch in water. They're tadpoles, they grow, and then eventually they can move out of water and onto the land. Okay, so they will first start with lungs here. Okay, and then, first they'll start with gills, then they will develop into lungs so they can breathe air. And some would be able to breathe through their skin as well. Remember, we're talking about generalities here. The common amphibian, not necessarily every single one may or may not fit these parameters. Okay. Common amphibians: frogs, toads, salamanders, and caecilians. These animals like a kind of a moist, wet environment. So here you have a lanceolate here, tunicate here. These are your non-vertebrate chordates. Kind of looks similar to that of a worm or a sponge here. Evolutionary wise, very basic. Amphibians here. Okay, you have a frog, a toad, a salamander, and a caecilian. That's what that looks like if you're wondering what that was. Um, so you can see that they're going to start off pretty much in water and then develop to be able to live life on land. Continuing with chordates, reptiles, birds, and mammals. So reptiles, they're going to be adapted to living on dry land. They have scaly skin, well-formed lungs, strong legs. Um, this here, you're going to get kind of this broken off as far as what is an amniotic egg, okay, or amniotic sac. In humans, that's going to be the placenta. That's going to be pretty much the amniotic sac. In the fluid that a fetus sits in that's called the amniotic fluid. So it's pretty much just a fluid or a sac that is covering and supplying nutrition to the larva or the fetus. Okay, so it has membranes to keep it from drying out. Common animals being reptiles, lizards, snakes, turtles, tortoises, crocodiles, and tuataras. Um, so birds going to be the next one. Ava or aves. That's why if you ever gone to the zoo or I think the Wild Animal Park has some or Safari Park, whatever it's called nowadays, has what are called aviaries. And that's pretty much like a giant bird cage where there's a bunch of birds just flying around. You get to walk through it. So aves being relating to birds. They are endothermic, meaning they are warm blooded or they produce heat within their body, which makes sense because they're going to use a lot of calories. The whole idea of eating like a bird, it's not necessarily true. They don't eat a lot. They peck, but they do. They don't eat a lot at one time, but they eat very often. Very few times you'd be able to not feed a bird. That's just simply they have to make a lot of, and they have to take in a lot of calories to burn a lot of calories because they can fly. Two legs are covered with scales, front limbs are wings, so you have four limbs here. 30 main groups of birds today, considered one of the larger groups as far as more, I guess I should say, more diversified. Then you have mammals. Mammals variation in size, covered in hair, breathe air. They have four-chambered hearts. They're endothermic. They feed young with milk. Most bear live young, developed inside the mother. Most now you have a few animals, like I said, will not necessarily fit this generalization. But you have 26 different orders of mammals. So quite diverse as well. Reptiles, here you have a tuatara, looks somewhat like a iguana. Here you have a crocodile. Here you have a turtle. You have a tortoise. Difference between a tortoise and a turtle. Turtles live in the water or have water plays an aspect in their life, and tortoises do not. Snake and lizard here. So birds, very different kind of birds. Birds of prey. Um, Feed on nectar, woodpecker, the macaw family, and penguins, my favorite, probably bird. Mammals, you have different here. Platypus here, you probably know, is going to hatch eggs. They are different than the normal. And a koala here, which is considered a marsupial, is going to house young in a pouch. And others you should be able to get Shamu. Fish. So let's talk about fish. Like I said, fish are going to be the largest and they're going to have different types of fish. So we're going to spend a little bit more time. Three types. Your shark constructible, that's due on Friday, okay, is going over one of those, and that's going to be the cartilaginous fish here, simply meaning a cartilage skeleton. They don't have bones, okay, other than jaws, okay. Have fins, have very varied diet. Jawless fish being that of Cartilage skeletons, no backbones but have a notochord. Filter food as larva parasites as adults. Okay, these are the lampreys and hagfish. A lot of these, a lot of times, suckerfish kind of things like that. You can see these as kind of suckerfish. They're pretty much eating off of hosts and things like that. So you'll see this. They don't have a jaw. They kind of have a sucker on the end of their face, or I guess their end of their body. And then you have your more common bony fish. That's if you were to go to the lake and go fishing, and that's pretty much what you're trying to catch. There you have ray fin versus lobed fin. Okay, ray fin name describes the bones that hold up their skin in their fins, fin scales, and again, lobed fin are larger bones that support a more thick, fleshy fins. These are lungfishes and coelacanths. Of the ray fin, there's 42 different orders, so quite a bit. These are coming from, you look at a coral reef, something like that, you have tons and tons of different types of ray fin fish that are just floating around. Not so much with lobed fish. So here you go. Here are your kind of different type of fishes. You have your cartilaginous fish here. Okay, your jawless fish here. Your bony or your ray finned fish here, and your lobed fin fish here. So you see that it doesn't necessarily going to have these, and it kind of doesn't have scales like this. It's going to be more of a fleshier type of skin. Here is a cladogram. Now you need to take a look at this and be able to understand it. You will have questions on your quiz about the cladograms and the different types of chordates and invertebrates. Not only will you have one about the invertebrates, but you will have one as well as chordates. So you can see here the differences. Here's your key. Here's your kind of the groups that we went over, color coordinated, and then all these little dots here are things that kind of branch out. So endothermy, out of all the animals, there's only a couple that are cold or warm-blooded. Endo being inside, so therefore they generate heat from being inside. That being the birds and mammals. You have amniotic eggs, that being here. You have reptiles here. Okay, so you have some sort of shell or membrane that keeps it from drying out. Then you have four limbs. Okay, so here you're going to have amphibians. Okay, some of this may look familiar. We've done some exercises with this cladogram. If you can think back to the exercise we did in class. Now we're going to a little bit into more detail about that. So that's what we're going to pretty much go in. So if these are all chordates here, you can see the most basic being those of the non-vertebrate chordates, or what you have here, the tunicates and the lancelets. And that's because they don't have a vertebrae, so everything else after this is going to be a true chordate and have a vertebrate. So that was it. Chapter 26.2, quiz on the end of the week. So make sure you have finished 26.1 and 26.2. That's what your quiz will be on. And your science structable, your shark project, that's due Friday. Have a blessed week.